Before Americans ever heard the phrase Iran-Contra, Robert Perry was exposing Ollie North's involvement in Central and South America. Even after being drummed out of the mainstream media, he continued to report on important issues. Today, he reports for his website on issues such as the Military Commissions Act. I sat down to be a guest on Bill O'Reilly's show recently, and when I went into makeup, I sat down and looked to my right. It's Ollie North. Now, how is it that you can turn on Fox News any day and you can see a guy like Ollie North, which you thoroughly exposed in Iran-Contra, doing media analysis, and you aren't working for one of the top newspapers in the entire country having exposed him?
Well, I think it says something. It says something about what happened to the media during that period. I think what's sad is that we now have a mainstream media that won't really pursue important stories in a courageous way. There are good reporters still in the mainstream media. I'm not going to say that there aren't. There are plenty. And sometimes they do very good work, very courageous work. Some of the reporting inside Iraq has been very brave. A lot of it done by Iraqi journalists for U.S. news organizations. But it's extremely hard. And there's also a hesitancy on the part of the major news organizations to sort of bring some of this information together in a meaningful way.
One of these courageous stories that you're talking about was one that you had published, and it talked about the Military Commissions Act, which Truth Out has reported on pretty extensively, and even I didn't know about this any person. What is the language with any person that's inside of the Military Commissions Act?
But basically, the Military Commissions Act is a very long bill, and it starts off with what's been focused on, that this is aimed at non-American citizens, and they are denied habeas corpus, and if they are deemed enemy combatants, they can be put into this legal system, the military commissions. However, it's a long law, and I spent some time just reading through it. I remember if you remember Congressman Conyers in Fahrenheit 9/11, where Michael Moore asks him, well, how could you pass the Patriot Act without knowing what was in it? And Conyers says, sit down, young man, my son. We pass a lot of laws. We don't know what's in them. And that's what happened here. There was a section toward the end of the Military Commissions Act that starts going into no longer non-citizens. It becomes any person. And some of them are specifically aimed at American citizens, seemingly. There's one section, any person with a duty or allegiance to the United States who aids an enemy combatant can come into this system. Now, Osama bin Laden presumably does not have an allegiance to the United States. People that would be American citizens.
Right. I mean, it says it right in your passport that you have an allegiance to the United States. So,
right.
And what does this mean? Is it just wording that's in a 1,000-page bill that means nothing, or?
Well, if you read this, it is not just focused the way they're telling us toward foreign enemy combatants. It's basically saying if there are fifth columnists in the United States, Americans who are somehow helping those people, those Americans can also go into the system where the basic rules of the game are quite different. You don't get a chance to really present your case. Secret evidence can be used against you. The prosecutor can have ex parte meetings with the judge. So it's basically a kind of a kangaroo court that they've set up, but it doesn't apply just to enemy combatants. It can apply to anyone basically the president deems to be aiding and abetting enemy combatants.
Is there anybody addressing that this any person language, this language specifically targeting U.S. citizens? Is there anybody that is looking to get rid of this language, get rid of it altogether? What is going forward with the Military Commissions Act?
Well, as you may know, there was an amendment that Senator Leahy and Senator Specter tried to push through. Although it would not address the overall law, it targeted the habeas corpus provision, which it's basically said they're going to restore habeas corpus, which was intended to
the
the top
Habeas
of
Restoration
Habeas
Act.
Restoration
Right.
Act.
Okay.
And it had a majority in the Senate, but not enough, not a supermajority enough to get past the Republican opposition to it. So that is now essentially dead, as far as I can tell.
So there's no restoring habeas. There's no taking away the military commissions for this any person.
No.
So still on the books today.
Sure.
If President Bush wanted this videotape, say, to be deemed as evidence of terrorism, you or I could be locked up in these military commissions?
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not likely to happen. One has to always look at likelihoods. However, should there be an emergency, some kind of crisis, another attack of some kind, and people are scared and angry, that's when you would see some of these provisions possibly implemented. But the point I'm trying to make in this article, and we've made in other articles at consortiumnews.com, is that the framework has been put in place for what could be a police state or certainly an authoritarian state. So even if it may not happen ever, the point is that these provisions, these principles have been laid in place for these kinds of unauthorized or improper arrests to occur and pretty much anything else. As Al Gore said in the speech when he was reviewing the claims that the president made in terms of his power, Gore said, if all these things are in fact claimed as presidential power, what can the president not do? And I think that's a fair point. The president is saying that under the way they've defined this, that there is this endless war, that the war is everywhere. This is not a case that the war might be in Europe, or it might even be like in the case of Lincoln and the Civil War. There was fighting in Maryland, so he suspends habeas corpus in an area. And even in a sense of a short period of time, the length of that war was going to be a defined war. It was going to be a beginning and an end. This is a war that has no end point. Bush has said as much. There will be no surrender on the deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier. So it's endless and it's everywhere. So if you follow their logic, that means we no longer live in a democratic republic. We live in a different kind of a society where there are no inalienable rights anymore. And that's the real danger in my view.
With wording such as any person being snuck into legislation such as the Military Commissions Act, it's very important that journalists like Robert Parry continue to uncover truths in their work. This has been Jeff Millard reporting from the Media Accountability Conference in Sonoma, California.